The impeachment controversy is moving from Capitol Hill to recreation centers and schools across the country. Lawmakers spent the week holding town hall meetings in their home districts, clarifying their message on whether the president should be impeached. Over 90% of House Democrats now openly support impeachment proceedings or have signaled that they are open to supporting it.
Wow, this happened over the last week in Washington.
Occasional laughter mixed with some contention in central New York's 19th district.
This came from a whistleblower complaint.
Secondhand.
That's where freshman Democratic Congressman Antonio Delgado heard both sides of the argument to impeach the president.
Identify the exact crimes that you think happened.
It is a crime to solicit anything of value from a foreign national.
Do you feel like you have your constituents behind you on the subject of impeachment?
Well, I think it's about whether or not we give truth a chance here, right? And understand, I mean, you were here, you were in the room. I think people have...
You were in the room too.
People have mixed points of view.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
Doing nothing to me means his behavior gets worse.
Four-term California Congressman and former Democratic presidential candidate Eric Swalwell talked about the need to move swiftly.
If you don't impeach this president, like, what would be considered impeachment?
Instead of allaying our concerns, the president and his administration have poured gasoline on the fire.
On Staten Island, Congressman Max Rose is among the last Democratic holdouts to come out in support of impeachment in a historically conservative district.
We have Republicans who swore the same oath to the Constitution that I did, but suddenly they become deaf, mute, blind whenever allegations against the president are brought up. That's an even greater threat to our democracy.
I beg your pardon, but all of our allies, he's pushing aside. He's making fun of them on Twitter. He calls them names.
And ma'am, I can't speak for him.
I know you can't speak for him, but you can speak for yourself.
If the House votes to impeach, deciding to remove the president from office will be up to senators like Iowa Republican Joni Ernst, who is up for re-election herself in 2020. Are Senate Republicans talking amongst themselves about their own concerns with President Trump in this moment?
Well, I haven't visited with others about their concerns.
Have you spoken
with
to
the
Leader
president. We did have a discussion. He made it very clear that all the information, it'll come forward, it'll go to that Senate Intelligence Committee, and then they will sort through it again in a bipartisan manner.
So joining me now is Alex Wagner. She's the co-host and executive producer of the Circus. So listen, Alex, periodically we've been tapping into these polls, trying to get an indication about how Americans feel about impeachment. And, it's still pretty split in this country. Even though the polls shift maybe 1% here and there, nothing much has changed. Have you noticed that when you go out to these town hall meetings, are voters split?
There's definitely a sense that people are retreating to their sides of the aisle, but this is not something that you don't already know, my friend. But the fact that there is such an avalanche of developments regarding the impeachment saga, I think makes it hard to predict whether those partisan divisions remain calcified, right? I talked to some voters who said, on its face, the whistleblower's complaint, the transcript between the call between President Trump and President Zelensky, I don't see anything there that's impeachment worthy. Now, we have new news overnight about text messages, pieces of data that may move voters in one direction or another. It is worth noting that among Democrats and progressives who are already skeptical of President Trump, there is, I don't think, anything that will sway them and bring them back towards the middle on this presidency.
So I'm curious about how Democrats and Republicans, how lawmakers are sort of selling this inquiry to their constituents. What are they saying?
So it's really interesting to go to town halls where it's either a vulnerable Republican or a moderate Democrat. Antonio Delgado is one of those moderate Democrats. His district was won by President Trump by 6 points in 2016. He won it by 5 points in 2018. It's a third Democrat, a third Republican, a third independent. Those Democrats are framing this moment not as a sort of corrupt presidency, but more as an issue of national security and patriotism. They understand that to win over skeptical Republicans and independents, this needs to be about America and I'm not going to say America first, but fundamentally about American values and not a sort of character assassination of the president in office. It's a very tricky line to walk, especially in these times of heightened partisan division, but they are trying to walk it nonetheless.
Right, and you're right. It's the swing states, the swing voters, and the swing states that are of the most concern to both parties. The representatives in those states, do they think that this impeachment inquiry is going to be a good thing for them or not a good thing for them? I mean, do they think it could cost them their job?
Well, look, I think initially there was some real trepidation on the part of these moderate Democrats. Max Rose from Staten Island just came out yesterday, effectively Wednesday night, saying he was for impeachment. So there was, Nancy Pelosi, I think, had given some of her soldiers some running room on this, knowing that they kind of had to see where the wind was blowing when they got back home. But I think as there is more evidence, as there is more there are more data points, as you start seeing, polling with more Americans supporting impeachment, the impeachment inquiry at least, they feel more confident in going forward with the rest of their caucus and saying, okay, I can be for impeachment and I can weather this storm. I mean, as it pertains to the president actually being removed from office, that's really a question for the Senate, where the political dynamics are considerably different than they are in the country on whole.
So, when you're in this news bubble, right, there's a tendency to sort of focus on whatever the scandal with this administration, sort of the scandal or the controversy of the moment. And when it was Mueller, we were all heads down deep in Mueller. But when you do that, it's really hard to figure out exactly what everyone else who's not in this bubble is talking about. Are voters talking about impeachment, or are they still talking about the things that we know they're most interested in, like health care, the economy, jobs, all that good stuff?
Yeah, you are. This is a good question. Impeachment is a sort of shiny object. It gets brought up at these town halls. But I would be not doing my job as a journalist if I didn't highlight exactly what you said, which is there are bread and butter issues that are much more animating these audiences. In Iowa, I was in Carroll County, a district President Trump won by 10 points in 2016. And the voters there were concerned about gun safety reform. They were concerned about the environment and the impact of climate change on soil and crop health. And they were very, very animated by the talk over the China trade deal and the tariffs that are hitting small businesses in the region. So, there are kitchen table issues that still remain the bulwark of concern among voters. Impeachment is it's sort of the frosting on the layer cake of discontent, if you will.
Right, right. But yeah, those are the issues that hit you in the pocketbook every single day. So it totally makes sense. Alex Wagner, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.